Picture a freezing New York City alley at midnight, the wind howling through the narrow passage, carrying the faint glow of distant streetlights. A little girl, barely 6, is curled up on a tattered blanket, her frail frame shivering against the cold concrete floor. She whispers, "I miss Daddy so much," her voice a trembling plea lost in the city's relentless hum. Her curly auburn hair is matted, her thin jacket no match for the biting chill, her blue eyes glistening with unshed tears. Then, a sleek Bentley glides to a stop, its headlights cutting through the darkness. A millionaire steps out, his polished shoes clicking on the pavement, his sharp eyes catching her soft words. He kneels beside her, his tailored coat brushing the ground, his presence a sudden beacon in her lonely night. What could leave a child abandoned in a frozen alley, grieving her father? Why would a wealthy stranger, known for his guarded heart and iron will, pause to listen? This is a story of loss, compassion, and a moment that rewrites lives forever. You're about to dive into a tale so raw, so emotional, it'll grip your soul and leave you breathless. Join us for the unforgettable journey of Mia, Victor Langston, and a single act of courage that defies all odds. Hit play and let's unravel a story that'll tug at your heartstrings and warm your soul. Hey everyone! Welcome back to the channel, where we unearth stories that hit you deep in the soul, spark hope, and celebrate the incredible power of human kindness. If you're new here, smash that subscribe button and join our vibrant community of story lovers. We're absolutely thrilled to have you. Today, we're diving into a tale that feels like it's ripped from a Hollywood blockbuster, but it's real, raw, and profoundly moving. It's about Mia, a 6-year-old girl lost in a world of grief and hardship, her heart heavy with longing for her father, Victor Langston, a millionaire whose polished exterior hides a heart guarded by years of solitude, and a single moment that turned their lives upside down. This isn't just about wealth or loss. It's about compassion, redemption, and the courage to rewrite a broken story in an instant. Let's meet Victor Langston. At 52, he's a real estate mogul in New York City, a titan whose name is synonymous with power, prestige, and unyielding ambition. Worth over $300 million, Victor lives in a Park Avenue penthouse that's a masterpiece of opulence. Picture a sleek marvel of marble and glass, with soaring 18-foot ceilings, a private rooftop garden blooming with rare orchids, a wine cellar stocked with vintage Bordeaux and Tuscan reds, and floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of Manhattan's glittering skyline, from the Empire State Building to the Hudson River. His life is a showcase of success, tailored suits flown in from Savile Row, exclusive galas at the Metropolitan Museum of Art where he mingles with the city's elite, and a reputation for being brilliant but distant. A man who commands respect but rarely offers warmth. Behind the polished facade, Victor is a loner. Widowed 8 years ago after losing his wife, Sophia, to a sudden illness, he has no children and has buried himself in Langston Enterprises, building impenetrable walls around his heart. His staff, drivers, housekeepers, personal assistants, private chefs, manage his world like a finely tuned orchestra, but he barely acknowledges them, their names and faces fading into the blur of his high-stakes deals and multi-million-dollar acquisitions. Now let's meet Mia. She's a 6-year-old with curly auburn hair that falls in tangled waves, blue eyes that hold a quiet sorrow despite their spark, and a smile that rarely surfaces, hiding a world of pain and longing. Mia lives with her mother, Elena, in a crumbling tenement in the Bronx, a neighborhood where hope is a scarce commodity. The tenement is a cramped, drafty space, its peeling paint flaking onto the floor, its flickering fluorescent lights casting harsh shadows, its single mattress on the floor a stark symbol of their struggle. Elena works as a street vendor near one of Victor's upscale developments in Midtown, selling coffee and bagels from a weathered cart to scrape by. Mia's father, Daniel, a construction worker with a warm laugh, died in a workplace accident a year ago, leaving a void that haunts Mia's every moment. Her days are spent navigating a rough neighborhood, dodging gangs on street corners and the wail of sirens that pierce the night. Her nights are often spent hungry, curled up on a thin blanket beside Elena on the floor, clutching a worn stuffed bear named Teddy, a gift from her father, her only link to the love and safety of her past. Elena's vendor cart, parked on a bustling midtown corner near Victor's sleek office tower, brings her into the periphery of his world, but he's never noticed her or Mia. Mia sometimes tags along, sitting quietly on a crate beside the cart with a tattered library book or a broken toy, her small frame lost among the hurried pedestrians rushing to offices and coffee shops. Her faded jacket, patched at the elbows, blends into the city's gray backdrop, and her quiet presence goes unnoticed by the crowds. Victor, who oversees his properties from his penthouse or boardroom, has never seen Mia, never noticed the small girl sitting by the cart, her head bowed over a book about bears in enchanted forests. To him, Elena is just another vendor, a fleeting figure in the city's endless churn, her struggles invisible in the shadow of his empire. But Mia isn't invisible to everyone. Javier, a security guard at Victor's midtown property, notices her. A warm man in his 40s with a kind smile, Javier sees how Mia is too quiet for a 6-year-old, how her clothes are threadbare and too small, how her blue eyes light up with a fleeting joy when he sneaks her a donut or a piece of fruit from his lunch. He senses something's deeply wrong, her hunger, her sadness, the way she whispers, "Daddy," when she thinks no one's listening, but he doesn't know the full story. He's tried asking Elena gentle questions about Mia's home life, but Elena's grief and exhaustion make her defensive. Her response is sharp, "We're getting by." Javier hesitates to push further, afraid of overstepping, but he keeps a close eye, slipping Mia snacks and watching for any chance to help. Victor, consumed by his real estate empire, is oblivious to Mia's existence, let alone the struggles that define her young life. That is, until one fateful night, a moment that will shatter his carefully constructed world and force him to confront a reality he never imagined. Let's dive into the problem that set the stage for this life-altering encounter. Mia's life was a quiet battle against grief and hardship, a world far too heavy for her small shoulders. At 6, she should have been chasing fireflies in a park, giggling at bedtime stories about magical bears, or dreaming of adventures with Teddy, her stuffed bear. Instead, she was surviving, navigating a life where hunger, loneliness, and the ache of loss were constant companions. Elena, her mother, was a loving but overwhelmed woman, worn down by her job as a street vendor and the crushing grief of losing Daniel, Mia's father, in a construction accident a year ago. Their Bronx tenement was a cramped, drafty space, its peeling paint flaking onto the floor, its flickering fluorescent lights casting harsh shadows, its single mattress on the floor a stark symbol of their poverty. The neighborhood was unforgiving, gangs lingered on street corners, their voices sharp with menace, sirens wailed through the night, and the air carried the weight of danger. Mia learned to stay quiet, to blend into the shadows, to avoid trouble in a place where trouble seemed to find everyone. Hunger was a relentless ache, her meals often just a stale bagel from Elena's cart or whatever Javier, the security guard, could slip her, a donut, a piece of fruit, a half-eaten sandwich. Elena's long hours at the vendor cart, parked on a bustling midtown corner near Victor's sleek office tower, meant Mia often tagged along, sitting on a wooden crate with Teddy, coloring on scrap paper with broken crayons or reading a tattered library book about bears in enchanted forests. The cart, weathered and creaking, was a small island in the city's chaos, surrounded by the clatter of coffee cups and the rush of pedestrians. Javier, the security guard at Victor's property, took a shine to Mia, noticing her thin frame, her faded jacket that was too small, the way she'd whisper, "Daddy," when she thought no one was listening. He suspected neglect, her hunger, her sadness, the faint shadows under her blue eyes, but he lacked proof. Elena's grief and financial strain left her distant, her patience fraying under the pressure of survival. Mia was paying the price: hunger, loneliness, and nights spent curled up on a thin blanket on the cold tenement floor, her small hands clutching Teddy as she whispered about her father. Victor, meanwhile, lived in a different universe. His Park Avenue penthouse was a fortress of solitude, its sleek marble and glass design a testament to his wealth, but not his warmth. He was a man of routine, his life a carefully choreographed dance of boardroom battles, real estate acquisitions, and high-stakes negotiations. The loss of his wife, Sophia, 8 years ago to a sudden illness, had left him guarded, his heart sealed behind the walls of his empire. Langston Enterprises was his legacy, a real estate giant that shaped New York's skyline with luxury condos, office towers, and commercial developments. His staff, dozens of employees across his properties and offices, were invisible to him, their personal lives irrelevant. When his property manager mentioned issues with vendors like Elena, late permits, complaints about loitering near the cart, Victor was dismissive, his response curt, "Fix it." His mind was on a $200 million deal to acquire a prime Manhattan property, not a struggling vendor or the child who tagged along. Mia's existence, Elena's struggles, none of it registered in his world of wealth and power. But Mia's situation was growing dire. Elena's grief led to missed shifts at the cart, risking her vendor license, and her despair pushed her to the edge of collapse. She was barely holding on, her love for Mia overshadowed by the weight of loss and poverty. One freezing night, unable to cope, Elena made a desperate choice. She left Mia in the alley near the cart, promising to return after figuring things out. Mia, alone and shivering, curled up on a tattered blanket, her small voice whispering, "I miss Daddy so much," as she clutched Teddy against the cold. Victor, inspecting his midtown property that night after a late meeting, was walking to his Bentley when he saw her small form in the alley, her words carrying faintly through the wind. He stopped, his heart struck by her grief, and knelt beside her, his voice firm but kind, "You're not alone anymore." The breaking point came on that freezing midnight, the city buzzing with distant lights, the alley a stark contrast to the warmth of Victor's world. Mia, alone and trembling, whispered her longing for her father, her voice barely audible over the wind. Victor, leaving his property, heard her and knelt beside her, his tailored coat brushing the grimy concrete, his heart racing at the sight of Mia, shivering and lost, her blue eyes glistening with tears. Victor didn't know Mia, didn't know her story, but her whispered words hit him like a tidal wave, stirring a compassion he hadn't felt in years. Who was this girl, and why was she abandoned in an alley, grieving alone? Let's go back to understand how this moment unfolded and what Victor did next to change everything. To grasp the full weight of that moment in the alley, we need to rewind to Mia's life before that freezing night. She was born to Elena and Daniel, a loving couple whose Bronx apartment was once a haven of warmth and laughter. Daniel, a construction worker with a warm laugh and a knack for storytelling, would tuck Mia into bed with tales of bears in magical forests, his voice soothing her to sleep. His death in a workplace accident when Mia was 5 shattered their world, leaving Elena broken and Mia grieving a father she adored. Elena took up the vendor cart to survive, selling coffee and bagels on a bustling midtown corner, but grief and poverty overwhelmed her. Their tenement became a place of sorrow, its single mattress on the floor a symbol of their struggle, its drafty walls offering no comfort. Mia clung to Teddy, her stuffed bear, a gift from Daniel, whispering to it about her father, her only link to the love and safety of her past. Mia was a quiet child, her blue eyes bright with a longing for the past, her curly auburn hair often tangled from neglect. She loved books, tattered ones from the library about bears in enchanted forests, where she could escape into worlds of love, safety, and adventure. She'd draw on scrap paper, sketching Teddy as a brave protector in a forest of stars, her small hands moving carefully with broken crayons. But hunger and loneliness were ever present. Elena's low earnings from the cart meant meals were scarce, a stale bagel, a can of watery soup, and Mia learned to ignore the ache in her stomach, her small body growing thinner under her faded jacket. The Bronx neighborhood was dangerous, with gangs on corners, their voices sharp with menace, and sirens piercing the night, a constant reminder of the world's harshness. Mia stayed small, moving quietly to avoid trouble, her blue eyes scanning for danger. When Elena worked late at the vendor cart, Mia tagged along, sitting on a wooden crate with Teddy, coloring jungle scenes or reading her library books to escape her fears. The cart, parked near Victor's upscale office tower, was a small island in the city's chaos, surrounded by the clatter of coffee cups and the rush of pedestrians in suits and scarves. Javier, the security guard at Victor's property, became Mia's quiet ally. A warm man in his 40s, Javier noticed her thin frame, her faded jacket that was too small, the way she'd whisper "Daddy" when she thought no one was listening. He'd slip her snacks, a donut, a piece of fruit, a half-eaten sandwich, and tell stories of bears ruling magical forests, hoping to coax a smile, but he saw her sadness and suspected neglect. The faint shadows under her eyes, the way she'd flinch at sudden noises. He'd tried talking to Elena, gently asking about Mia's home life, but Elena, consumed by grief and exhaustion, brushed him off, her voice sharp. "We're getting by." Javier didn't push, afraid of making things worse, but he kept a close eye, watching for any chance to help. Victor, meanwhile, was a man of precision, his life a carefully curated empire. The loss of his wife, Sophia, 8 years ago had left him wary of connection, his heart sealed behind the walls of his ambition. Langston Enterprises was his life's work, a real estate giant that defined New York with its luxury condos, office towers, and commercial developments. His Park Avenue penthouse was a showcase of wealth, sleek marble and glass, a rooftop garden with rare orchids, a wine cellar of vintage bottles, and panoramic views of Manhattan. But it was a lonely place, filled with the hum of staff but no real warmth. Victor rarely visited his properties, leaving their management to his team. When his property manager mentioned issues with vendors like Elena, late permits, complaints about loitering near the cart, Victor was detached, his response cold: "Fix it." His mind was on a $200 million deal to acquire a prime Manhattan property, not a struggling vendor or the child who tagged along. He didn't know Mia existed, didn't know a child was grieving under the shadow of his city's skyline. But Mia's world was crumbling faster than anyone knew. Elena's grief led to missed shifts at the cart, putting her vendor license at risk, and her despair pushed her to the edge of collapse. She was barely holding on, her love for Mia overshadowed by the weight of loss and poverty. One freezing night, unable to cope, Elena made a desperate choice. She left Mia in the alley near the cart, promising to return after figuring things out. Mia, alone and shivering, curled up on a tattered blanket, her small voice whispering, "I miss Daddy so much," as she clutched Teddy against the cold. Victor, inspecting his midtown property that night after a late meeting, was walking to his Bentley when he saw her small form in the alley, her words carrying faintly through the wind. He stopped, his heart struck by her grief, and knelt beside her, his voice firm but kind. "You're not alone anymore." Victor acted swiftly. He called a social worker to ensure Mia's safety that night, arranging for her to be taken to a warm, safe foster home. He tracked down Elena, who was found hours later, overwhelmed and tearful, admitting her despair and guilt. Victor, torn between anger and pity, offered to fund her counseling and housing to stabilize her life, but insisted Mia's safety came first, non-negotiable. That moment in the alley was a seismic shift. Mia's whispered words, "I miss Daddy so much," shattered Victor's carefully built walls of detachment. Javier, who had shared his concerns about Mia with Victor earlier that day, explained Elena's struggles and Mia's grief, his voice heavy with worry. Victor called a social worker to place Mia in a safe, warm foster home that night, ensuring she had a soft bed, a warm meal, and someone to comfort her. He funded counseling and housing for Elena, giving her a chance to rebuild her life, but his focus was on Mia's immediate safety, a priority he refused to compromise. Victor didn't stop there. He hired a lawyer to ensure Mia's protection, documenting Elena's struggles to build a case for her care. He visited Mia in foster care, bringing books about bears and enchanted forests and a new sketch pad with colored pencils, learning her love for stories and drawing. "You're safe now," he promised, kneeling to meet her blue eyes, which flickered with wary hope. Mia, hesitant but sensing his sincerity, began to trust him, her small hand clutching Teddy as she nodded. Victor petitioned to become her legal guardian, determined to give her the stable, loving home she deserved. The court, seeing his commitment and resources, approved, and Mia moved into the Park Avenue penthouse, her small presence filling its silent halls with life, her laughter a new melody in a home once defined by solitude. Mia's story is more than a millionaire's rescue, it's a testament to the power of one moment to change a life. Victor didn't just save Mia, he found purpose in her resilience, a reason to open his heart after years of solitude. He became her guardian, transforming his Park Avenue penthouse into a home filled with warmth, bedtime stories about bears and enchanted forests, and the sound of Mia's laughter echoing through its halls. Elena, now in recovery with counseling and a new apartment, visits regularly, rebuilding her bond with Mia under Victor's supportive watch. Victor, once a solitary figure, is now a father figure, reading tales of magical adventures, framing Mia's colorful sketches of Teddy, and marveling at her courage and spirit. Today, Mia is a thriving 7-year-old, her curly auburn hair bouncing as she plays in the penthouse's rooftop garden, her blue eyes bright with hope and joy. Victor founded a foundation for grieving children, inspired by Mia's strength, funding shelters, counseling, and programs to heal broken hearts. This story shows that compassion can rewrite futures, that one act of kindness can mend a child's wounds and transform a heart, reminding us all of the power we hold to change lives. If Mia and Victor's story touched your heart, smash that like button and share it with someone who needs a spark of hope. Subscribe and ring the bell for more stories that inspire and uplift. Drop a comment. Have you ever witnessed an act of compassion that changed a life? We'd love to hear your story. Let's spread kindness together. See you in the next video.